Isn't it funny? It was Halloween night, and all the engines had gathered at Titmuth Sheds for their annual tradition of sharing ghost stories. They all wanted to try and tell the spookiest story of the night, each trying to beat the other in a battle of words. Soon, it was Percy's turn.
Whatever your story is, little Percy, it won't frighten me, scoffed Gorm.
The only one Percy's going to scare with his story is himself,
laughed James.
Maybe you should head back to Farquhar, added Henry. These stories might be too scary for a small engine like you.
That's enough, said Edward firmly, and looked kindly at Percy. Go on, Percy. Tell your story. Percy glared coldly at the big engines. Then began his tale. As you all know, I was built in a workshop on the mainland along with several other tank engines. One day, an unfamiliar purple engine rolled into the workshop, and the manager climbed out of his cab.
Everyone, this is Charlie. He's going to be a permanent shunter here, so I hope you all will make him feel welcome.
Oh, yes, sir, we all replied, and the manager walked away.
Howdy, fellas, said Charlie. You all want to hear a joke?
Before we could say anything, Charlie began his joke.
What is a snowman's favorite food? Iceburgers!
Charlie laughed and laughed at his joke, but we were all puzzled.
Isn't it funny?
Said Charlie, still giggling to himself.
What's a snowman?
Asked one of the engines.
I've never heard of an iceberger before,
added another.
You call yourself a comedian?
Said a third.
Maybe get some better material first.
But Charlie just kept laughing. Whenever Charlie shunted trucks in the yard, he would practice his routine with them. Although the trucks enjoyed Charlie's jokes more than we did, the other engines would always find a way to sneak in their biting criticism.
Isn't it funny?
Charlie would always say.
That joke was even worse than the last. Maybe try a different approach, like stopping. That was the least funny thing I've ever heard.
But Charlie didn't care and would just keep laughing at his jokes for minutes on end. Sometimes Charlie would even laugh so hard that he'd forget to pay attention to his work. One time, he bumped a line of trucks off the rails, and another time, he almost derailed on a set of points. But still, Charlie just kept on laughing. Sadly, his positive mood was about to come to an end. One day, Charlie was tasked with taking a special goods train to a station down the line. As he was preparing to leave, he looked over at us in the workshops.
Hey fellas, what do you call an engine who's hit rock bottom? A train wreck!
As usual, we all groaned at Charlie's joke, but he just gulped at his wit as he puffed away. As Charlie approached the station, he was still laughing at his joke. He was so distracted that he didn't notice the level crossing ahead, or the car stuck on it. Charlie struck the car with full force. The sound of twisting metal filled the air, and the family inside the car shrieked and screamed in horror. At last, Charlie came to a stop. He looked at the horror in front of him. Large red puddles soaked the ballast around him. Limp bodies lay underneath his wheels, and he heard the sounds of a child crying in agony from inside the jagged remains of the car.
Percy paused dramatically.
Something changed inside Charlie that day. Something snapped. As he stared at what he'd caused, his mouth twisted into a sinister grin, and he started to laugh. But it wasn't the same cheerful, goofy, hearty laugh we all knew. It was a soft, almost sinister laugh. It was filled with pain, and sometimes it almost sounded as if he was crying. He was still laughing when I came to take him back to the workshop. Are you alright, Charlie? I asked. Charlie didn't say anything at first. He just kept laughing.
Isn't it funny?
He suddenly asked. What is? I asked nervously.
That family in the car was just coming back from the hospital with their new baby.
I was horrified by this. What's so funny about that? I demanded.
This was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives.
Giggled Charlie maniacally.
But now they're all dead. Isn't it funny?
I chose to say nothing more as I dragged Charlie home. He laughed all the way back to the workshop, where the manager was waiting.
What do you have to say for yourself?
He demanded crossly. Charlie tried to hold back his laughter.
Those people were cut up like sausages when they slipped under my wheels. Sausages! Isn't it funny?
The manager's stern expression turned to one of fear as he watched Charlie cackle hysterically while blood dripped from his wheels. I was ordered to shunt Charlie into a siding out of the way until the manager decided what to do with him. But even across the yard, we could all still hear Charlie's laughter. His jokes became much more grim, and the trucks no longer enjoyed Charlie's company.
Hey, you trucks! What's the difference between you and the pile of firewood? You're much more fun to listen to when you're set ablaze!
The trucks would only look away meekly as Charlie's blood-curdling giggles crept into their minds. But even at night, the laughter never stopped. Charlie's cackle echoed across the workshop, haunting us in our sleep. Eventually, the manager decided to have Charlie cut up for scrap, as no one would buy him, and he kept scaring away any potential buyers for us. I was given the task of shunting Charlie to the scrap yards. The manager rode in my cab. Charlie just kept on laughing. When we arrived, I shunted Charlie into a siding, while the manager explained just what was happening.
You've caused me a lot of troubles these past few months.
He said firmly.
This is all you're good for now. Any last words?
Charlie looked down at the manager, still giggling hysterically.
Would you like to hear a killer joke?
He asked.
What do you call an engine who's hit rock bottom? A train wreck!
Charlie laughed quietly before grinning at the manager.
Isn't it funny?
He muttered.
What is?
Asked the manager.
Just how much pain a harmless little joke can bring.
Charlie whispered, his smile wider than ever. The manager said nothing and walked back into my cab as the cutters began their work. I'll never forget Charlie's demented laughter as the torches cut into his body. It's a sound that still haunts my dreams. His laughter seemed to grow louder and louder the further away I went from the scrapyard. But when I arrived back at the workshop, it stopped. The silence was almost unreal. But sometimes late at night, Charlie's laughter echoes across the line, from the workshop to the crossing and to the scrapyard. Some say he's still looking for someone to laugh at his jokes. I think he's looking for another punchline. Make sure it isn't you. The other engines were as still as ice. They stared at Percy, unaware that the little engine could tell such a horrifying story. Gordon, Henry, and James were all at a loss for words, so Edward spoke up.
Well, Percy, that was certainly the scariest story I've heard in a long time. How did you come up with something like that?
Percy looked morosely at the old engine. I didn't make it up, Edward, he said quietly. Charlie's still out there. Edward fell silent as Percy headed off for home, hopeful that his mind would never have to be haunted by Charlie's sinister laugh again.